Jacob was living in the land of Israel as a sojourner, with his 12 sons and his wives. While the older sons were looking after the livestock, Jacob had spent a lot of time with his youngest son Joseph. Joseph and his father grew very close. The other brothers were jealous of this. They were out looking after the sheep. And when Joseph went out with them, he brought a bad report back to his father, telling his father what they were up to. And then Joseph had had some dreams. In the first dream, they had been out harvesting, and the sheaves that the other 11 brothers had made came and gathered around his sheath and bowed down to it. In the second dream, the sun and moon and 11 stars had bowed down to him. But the brothers said, "Will we bow down to you? No way. Will you rule over us? No way. Will your mother and I bow down to you?" They envied him, but his father, who knew about dreams, kept the matter in mind. Now when Joseph was about 17, we take up the story from Genesis 37 verse 12. His brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." So he said to him, "Here I am." Then he said to him, "Please go and see if it is well with your brothers, and well with the flocks, and bring back word to me." So he sent him out of the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. Now a certain man found him, and there he was wandering in the field, and the man asked him, saying, "What are you seeking?" So he said, "I'm seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they are feeding their flocks." And the man said, "They have departed from here, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers, and found them in Dothan. Now when they saw him afar off, even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another, "Look, this dreamer is coming. Come therefore, let us now kill him, and cast him into some pit, and we shall say, 'Some wild beast has devoured him.' We shall see what will become of his dreams." But Reuben heard it, and delivered him out of their hands, and said, "Let us not kill him." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit, which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands, and bring him back to his father." So it came to pass, when Joseph had come to his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colours that was on him. Then they took him and cast him into a pit. And the pit was empty, there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal. Then they lifted their eyes and looked, and there was a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing spices, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry them down to Egypt. So Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh." And his brothers listened. Then Midianite traders passed by. So the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. Then Reuben returned to the pit, and indeed Joseph was not in the pit. And he tore his clothes, and he returned to his brothers and said, "The lad is no more, and I, where shall I go?" So they took Joseph's tunic, killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the tunic in the blood. Then they sent the tunic of many colours, and they brought it to their father, and said, "We have found this. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not?" And he recognized it, and said, "It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Without doubt Joseph is torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on his waist, and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted, and he said, For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning. Thus his father wept for him. Now the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. My name's Arthur. Thank you for joining me as we continue to meditate in Genesis 37 of the story of Joseph. So the envy that the brothers had, they had fueled in their own mind. They hadn't recognised that this was a wrong attitude and repented of it, but they had fueled it. And so as Joseph went about his business, he became their target. Joseph is in many ways a picture of the Lord Jesus. One prominent way is the fact that Jesus came as the nominated king to his own nation, and they crucified Jesus. They rejected him as their king. Well, Joseph in his dreams had been declared by God to be the ruler over his brothers. They recognised this meaning in the dreams, but refused to accept it, and they sought to kill him to deny any possibility that this could ever come true. Jacob sent Joseph to his brothers to see how they were, and Joseph was willing to go, even though he knew the hostility that his brothers had to him. I'm sure it was not hidden. But when he went to Shechem, they were not there, and as he wandered looking for them, another directed him to Dothan, where the brothers were, and so he came to his brothers. But as he came, they immediately recognised him by his distinctive coat, and before he came near, they had a plan. Now's our opportunity to kill him. There's just us here. We can cast his body in the pit. We can say a wild beast has devoured him. That'll be the end of his dreams. Would it be so terrible that this younger brother should rule over them? There was no rationality in their decision. It was just a matter of pride and rebellion. They had not learned the ways of God, and it would take them many years to do so. But Reuben, the oldest, had some sense of responsibility. He was the senior person, and he thought, no, I must take my youngest brother home to my father. He probably understood better than others, being the oldest, how important Joseph was to his father. And so he intervenes, saying, let's not kill him, rather let's just put him in the pit. His plan was to deliver Joseph from their hand and take Joseph back to his father. But he was trying to walk a middle road, to keep Joseph alive, but not to get out of favour with the other brothers. And so he didn't say they were doing wrong in opposing Joseph. He didn't object to Joseph being put in the pit and left to die. Whether his brothers saw through that or not, they went along with what Reuben planned, choosing not to kill him themselves. And indeed, when the Lord Jesus was executed, he was condemned by the Jewish authorities, but they refused to execute him themselves. They handed him over to the Gentiles to do it. So Reuben said, shed no blood, do not lay a hand on him. His plan was to rescue him and take him home. And so they took his coat off him, the coat of many colours, and put him in a pit. Fortunately, it was a pit that was empty. There was no water in it, so he wasn't going to drown in the pit. But I'm sure it was not a very happy place. And the pit, of course, always reminds us of death. And Jesus went into death for us. Now that they had dealt with Joseph, they were content, and they sat down for a meal, no doubt pleased with themselves.